Hey, good to see you. Welcome back to the Bruce Collins Show. Joining us tonight, our guest is Robert Bork Jr., the author of The New Paradox. Pull up a chair. The conversation is about to get interesting.
Flip on the switch, feel the static clear, naming the glow, yeah, the reason we're here. From the edge of the map to your kitchen chair, he's talking wild truth like he owns the air. Out past the highway, out past the mall, where the sand keeps secrets, you can hear that call. It's the Bruce Collins Show. The barrier of broadcasting, taking control from the desert wind to your radio. We're the loyal knights of the wobbly table, laughing loud, keeping legends stable. Yeah, the Bruce Collins Show. Funeral rides high over dust and stone, stories like sparks in a cyclone. Strange little kingdom made of coffee and chords, where the late night callers become the lords. Crowns made of stickers, capes made of flannel, we pledge our oaths to the glowing panel. It's the Bruce Collins Show. The barrier of broadcasting, stealing the glow from the desert wind to your radio. We're the loyal knights of the wobbly table, raising mugs, making myths and fables. Yeah, the Bruce Collins Show.
Welcome back to the Bruce Collins Show. I'm Bruce Collins, the Baron of Broadcasting. My co-host is Chad the Odometer Miles. Our guest tonight is best-selling author Robert Bork Jr. Of course, you may remember his father, Robert Bork Sr. His most recent book is The New Paradox. If you want to join the Bruce Collins Show community, we welcome you to join our page on Facebook. And also, we always appreciate it when you like our videos and subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. I also have another YouTube channel called Bruce Collins Show Reacts, or Bruce Collins Reacts and Stuff, that you may also enjoy. And now on with the show. Allow me to introduce my co-host, Chad Miles, and also Christopher Cartwright. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Bruce.
Hello.
So, guys, I just got back from a weekend vacation.
Oh, really? How was it?
It all started at the grocery store.
I didn't know they'd let you stay overnight.
No, I didn't stay at the grocery store, but it was there that I met a lovely woman who had a very interesting dress.
I have no idea where this is going.
The lady's dress was a map of Arizona. Isn't that clever?
It's unusual, I'll say that.
Right. Anyway, she oddly slapped me across the face.
This is a weird story. Why did she slap you?
I'm not really sure. All I did was try to show her where I wanted to go on vacation.
Okay, can we get to the actual vacation?
Where did you stay?
Yeah, don't get off track. Just tell us about the vacation.
Okay, so first of all, I made sure I prepared for vacation, as most people should. A lot of people forget to do that, but I really try to stay ahead of the game. So I bought this for my vacation to make sure I was prepared. And, the crazy thing is,
Well played.
there's a lot of gum left over in that bucket. Who knew? I just couldn't chew fast enough. So anyway, I'm
Wow.
sorry, Chad, I got off track there. To answer your question, I went up in the mountains and, I rented a cabin with running water. Nothing fancy.
Still, that sounds nice.
And peaceful.
Yeah, not really. Next time I'll probably just rent the cabin without the Native American.
Okay, I'll ask. What could have possibly went wrong?
He was doing a lot of hooping and hollering, and I even had to pull an arrow out of the wall.
This seems a little hard to believe.
What do you want me to do? Make something up like he TP'd the room?
No, I think you said enough.
Hey, guys, do you want to know about my skin?
Why on earth would we want to hear about your skin on the show, no less?
Well, that's right. Christopher and chafing. I remember that because they both start with CH.
I bought a whole bottle of the lotion at the store.
Well, that's what most people do.
I bet you feel better now.
Not really. I drank the whole bottle, but my skin still feels rough.
You drank the whole... You should probably read the instructions next time.
No, right.
You know what? I think it's time for the Chad Miles Report.
With the dumbest Chad of the week.
finishing strong. He shuffles up to the camera, cracked mug, crooked tie. Says, I've seen some stupid stories, but this one made me cry. Oh man, it's the Chad Miles Report headlines. The dumbest news of the week. From Florida man fights lawnmower to influx with concrete. We tune in for the train wreck. We can't stop. We lean into read. Yeah, the Chad Miles Report. Screaming the dumbest news of the week. So dumb, so sweet. Breaking cat stuck in a sweater. Breaking toast that looks like a face. Council meets about a pigeon who keeps pooping on the mayor's briefcase. He's deadpan reading disaster. That's really just a broken cone. Nation shocked. He says then Snickers by a kid who married his phone. It's the Chad Miles Report headlines. The dumbest news of the week. Grandma banned from local bingo for allegedly counting too quick. We tune in for the train wreck. We act appalled while trying not to scream. Yeah, the Chad Miles Report. Serving the dumbest news.
Well, you heard the music, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the Chad Miles Report. Take it away, Chad.
Article number 1. The most important part of deciding where to live is, of course, location, location, location. For the Ewing family, that's Disney World in Florida. People magazine reported on April 21st. Adam, 41, and Lauren, 36, and their 2 daughters live about half the year at an
Wow.
RV campsite at Disney's Fort Wilderness Resort. Resort rules stipulate that a single resort reservation can't be longer than 26 days. So, every few weeks, the Ewings pack up their RV and go somewhere else for 24 hours and move back in the next day. Sounds exhausting. This has just always been our go-to place, Adam said.
And that's
We
not
developed a
Adam the
community.
Woo, by the way.
We developed a community of friends here, and we never wanted to leave. The family started living full-time in their RV during COVID, and other times of the year, the Ewings find themselves in places like Utah, Canada, and Vermont, but always make their way back home. Despite living at the most magical place on earth, daily life for the Ewings is fairly typical of most families. Most of the time, it is normal life, working out, doing schoolwork, regular work, and then we'll go to the parks, mostly at night, Lauren said. Living on Disney property comes with a Disney price tag.
Oh, yeah.
The family has paid up to $8,000 per month to stay on
Wow.
site, a cost they say is well worth it.
And I bet
That's
they're
not
not
worth it.
I bet they're not factoring in the food and stuff that you get at Disneyland, the hiked
yeah.
up prices. I see people on YouTube all the time streaming Disney. I saw this one couple from, I would say they were from South Carolina or something, and they actually moved to Florida, and now they go into the parks and they stream every day moving through the parks, and they have, subscribers to their channel and everything. But I'm just thinking, how many times can you do the it's a small world after all before going insane?
$8,000 a month. You could have a pretty nice house and property for $8,000 a month if you paid a mortgage.
Or
Well,
you could invest that money and make a ton.
That too.
Did it say where they stay the rest of the time? The other 6 months?
The RV, but
Walmart
I'm-
parking lot.
Well,
They just pull up to a Walmart parking lot in their RV.
which is dangerous too.
Yeah, that's my guess.
that's
Article
places to
number
Cracker Barrel.
Article number 2. A spring football game at Virginia Tech was delayed after a parachutist crashed into the scoreboard over the school's football field,
Oops.
Lane
saw that.
Stadium. The New York Post reported on April 18th. Shortly before the game, which was scheduled to start at 3 p.m., 2 parachutists could be seen gliding over the field. The first one flew safely over, while the second crashed into the board between the C and the H in Tech. Very precise. Emergency personnel.
C and H in tech. That, you know what that stands for? Christopher and Chafing.
Yeah. Emergency personnel were able to retrieve the parachutist safely, and the skydiver was not hospitalized.
That's good.
While fans waited for the game to start, the board displayed an explanation for the delay. Attention, please. We are waiting for EMTs to get out of the board. Thank you for your patience. Over on X, formerly known as Twitter, Virginia Tech Athletics said, quote, "We are grateful to report the skydiver was safely secured and is currently stable. Our primary focus remains on their well-being." The football game resumed at 4 p.m.
Do you remember the guy that crashed into Caesar's Palace outdoor arena and there was a boxing match? I don't remember who it was. I think it was a Vander Holyfield fight or something like that. But he had like a giant fan on his back and a parachute. Do you remember that?
No.
And they called him the Fan Man. And I even think he was interviewed and he goes, "I'm the Fan Man. I'm the man with the fan." Of course, he went to jail, but
Did he land in the ring?
right outside, like, the apron of the ring, as we would call it in wrestling, he landed on that and they pushed him off.
Funny.
But he had this giant fan on his back. If the rotors had kept going, he could have hurt somebody in the
Oh
audience.
my gosh.
Oh, boy. Could have been a whole other story.
Yeah.
Article number 3. That same day as the Virginia Tech incident, apparently, on the other side of the country, a hot air balloon carrying 13 passengers made an unexpected stop in a backyard in Temecula, California, ABC 7 News reported. According to witnesses, the pilot announced that a lack of wind and dwindling fuel supply meant he had to land. "He was trying to get us to the street, but we couldn't get to the street in time, so we landed in the people's backyard safe and sound," passenger Brianna Avalos said. "He was an amazing pilot." Neighbors alerted the homeowners, Hunter and Jenna Perrin, of the incident. "I opened the sliding glass door and there's a basket full of 13 people in my backyard," Hunter said. "The pilot got it right down inside, directly in the backyard, and there was nothing there. The balloon didn't catch on anything. No one was injured."
Did you see the video of that?
No. There's a video?
It almost looks staged, though, because and it had to be because the cameraman was there. The lady's coming out of the back of her sliding glass door, and they pan over, and it's these people standing in a basket, like 13 people or whatever it was, and the hot air balloon, it's still, the balloon part is still up in the air, but they're all standing there like they're, ready to take a camera shot or something. It's like the cameraman must have said, "Nope, don't get out of the balloon just yet."
Wait.
It's an odd-looking thing.
Article number 4. This is, ladies and gentlemen, this is the feel-good article of the week. So just get ready to feel good when you hear this.
Yeah, and yet at my age, we wouldn't have thought that was cool, but I guess millennials, it's a cool thing.
I would have thought it was pretty cool when I was younger, but I was weird.
I guess so.
I'm a weirdo. Some high school students take a limo to prom. Others, like Brecken Andrews of Topeka, Kansas, roll up in the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile.
Yes.
According
that's awesome.
to UPI. The Seaman High School junior and his friends were at a Sonic on Friday, April the 17th, when they spotted the vehicle at a nearby grocery store in idea form. One of my buddies was like, "Can we rent this thing?" And I was like, "Well, what if we just ask about the prom? What if they take us?" "It's tomorrow," Andrews said. "You miss all the shots you don't take," he added. What a player. Driver or hot
Michael
dogger.
Scott quote.
Hot dogger, as they say in the wiener biz, Maggie Dawson was happy to help and took the students to the prom free of charge. "It was like a little light bulb," she said. "We were like, well, what time is the prom?" And from there, we checked our schedule and we were able to make it happen.
Yeah.
Kudos to you, Oscar Mayer.
Yeah,
for
but
making
I'm
dreams come true.
skeptical. I'm skeptical of Maggie Dawson because I'm thinking, well, I should probably call my boss, and then the boss says, "Yeah, what a great promotion! Let's inform UPI and the media that we're going to take these kids in the Wienermobile." Because this otherwise wouldn't be a news story, I think, unless Oscar Mayer wanted the free commercial.
They got it.
Yeah,
And now we're talking about it.
And every kid got an 8-pack of hot dogs.
Do you guys remember that show Psych that was on
I
USA
remember
for a
it,
while?
yeah.
We went to the premiere of one of their movies in San Diego at Comic-Con, and the entire cast came in like 4 different Wienermobiles. It was awesome.
Was Maggie Dawson there?
Maggie Lawson was,
Oh, I don't know.
because she is one of the stars.
Apparently, you can talk anybody at Oscar Mayer to use their
To do
Wienermobile.
anything.
Yeah. Call him
Yeah,
up
sure.
tonight. Hey, I got a dentist appointment tomorrow.
What's our
I need the-
schedule? Yeah, we're open.
I
We'll
need
do
the
it.
Wienermobile. I was thinking about calling Uber, but
Have you guys seen the Planters Nutmobile?
No.
yeah, I think I have.
I saw it in
Really?
a parking lot one day. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Is it like a big peanut?
It's just, a shelled peanut.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to look that up. Article number 5. Erica Brown of Anderson, Indiana this story's weird.
It is.
Is an only child, but is looking for her doppelganger. UPI reported on April 18th that facial recognition software flagged Brown for potential fraud during her driver's license renewal. A fraud and security enforcement investigator had to verify Brown's identity before allowing her to continue with the renewal. The officer showed her photos of another Indiana woman who is the same age as Brown but has a different name and address. Brown was stunned by the resemblance. What are the odds that we look so similar, live in the same place, and have never crossed paths, she said. Seeing someone who looked so much like me was really strange and bizarre. She was finally issued her license after 3 months of waiting, but continues to search for her look-alike. How does something like this even happen genetically, Brown wonders.
And I don't get why she has to search. Can't the DMV bring her in and kind of verify? Like I do understand that the DMV wouldn't give this Erica Brown the address of the other lady for obvious reasons. But one would think that it would be pretty easy to find this other person. I don't know. It seems strange.
Yeah, bring them in so they could see them together.
Yeah, she's like Erica Brown is like the modern day OJ. She's looking for the guilty party.
I'll find him someday.
Yeah. Well, good
I
luck,
won't
Erica.
rest.
Chad and Christopher, thank you so much for joining me this week, and I will see you next time. Our guest tonight, again, is Robert Bork Jr. He's the author of The New Paradox, and we'll talk to him in a moment. Our guest today is Robert H. Bork Jr. Robert H. Bork Jr. is the author, along with Mark W. Davis, of the new book, The New Paradox. Robert began his career as a police reporter before covering business and economics. He worked at U.S. News and World Report, serving as managing editor of the quarterly journal Regulation, and working as a reporter at Forbes, the Detroit Free Press, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and the Miami Herald. Robert later worked on Capitol Hill as a Senate aide and as special assistant to the U.S. Trade Representative. And for those of you watching on YouTube, I want to show a copy of the book. The book is The New Paradox. Again, Robert H. Bork Jr. and Mark W. Davis, and we're going to get right into it. Robert Bork Jr., welcome to the Bruce Collins Show.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, it's great to have you on. Now, your father, Robert Bork Sr., was such a significant figure in American legal history. Looking back now, what do you think he understood about the direction of the country that feels especially relevant today?
It's a very good question. My father understood something that I think we are only now fully rediscovering, and that's the greatest threat to free society doesn't usually come in the form of open confrontation with the Constitution, but in its gradual reinterpretation to serve political purposes. He saw very clearly that when judges, regulators, or political actors begin to substitute their own values for neutral principles, whether in the constitutional law or in economic policy, you don't just get bad decisions, you get a breakdown of the rule of law itself. The system stops being predictable and starts becoming discretionary, and discretionary power is where liberty goes to die. What feels especially relevant today is his warning that this wouldn't stay confined to the courts. Once the idea takes hold that outcomes matter more than principles, it spreads to administrative agencies, to antitrust enforcement, to corporate governance, and beyond. You begin to see law used as a tool to re-engineer social or political outcomes, rather than to protect a neutral framework for competition and freedom. In Antitrust, for example, he was very clear. If you abandon the consumer welfare standard in favor of a vague political goal or goals, whether that's fairness, industrial policy, or social objectives. You open the door to arbitrary enforcement, and once enforcement becomes arbitrary, it becomes political. I think he would look to the current moment and say, this is exactly the trajectory I warned about, not because anyone's policy is catastrophic, but because the underlying discipline of neutral principles is eroding. And once that discipline goes, it's very, very hard to get it back. Excuse me.
Now, you had a front row seat to your father's life and career. Is there anything about him that the public didn't fully understand, but you think that they should have?
I think what the public often missed about my father was how deeply principled and actually how restrained he was. He was portrayed as a kind of ideological figure, someone eager to impose his views. But the reality was almost the opposite. What drove him was a belief that judges and policymakers should not impose their personal preferences. He believed in discipline and sticking to neutral principles, even when they had outcomes that you might not personally like. That's a harder position than it sounds. It requires a kind of intellectual humility that's rare in public life. And the other thing people didn't fully appreciate was his sense of humor and warmth. He could be very funny and very human and very aware of the absurdities of the moment, even at the height of his confirmation battle. That part of him didn't really come through in the public narrative. And finally, I think people underestimated how forward-looking he was. Many of the debates we're having today about the role of the courts, the politicization of the law, the use of economic regulation to achieve social goals, he saw coming decades ago. So if there's one thing I wish people understood better, it's this. He wasn't trying to shape the country in his image. He was trying to preserve a system where no one gets to do that.
Now, Robert H. Bork Jr., you are the president of the Antitrust Education Project. Can you tell us more about this?
Sure. The Antitrust Education Project is a nonprofit dedicated to promoting economics-based antitrust policy, what I would call the consumer welfare approach, what my father, in fact, called the consumer welfare standard. Our core mission is educational. We work to explain why antitrust law should focus on protecting competition and consumers, not be repurposed as a tool for broader political or social objectives. That includes engaging with policymakers, supporting research, filing amicus briefs where appropriate, and helping elevate serious scholarship in this space. Right now, there's a real risk that antitrust is being pulled away from objective standards towards more discretionary, politically driven enforcement. We think that's a mistake, and not just economically, but legally, because it undermines predictability and ultimately harms consumers. So what we're trying to do is bring clarity and discipline back to the conversation, not ideology, but discipline. The idea that antitrust should be grounded in evidence, economics, and the rule of law. That's what we're about.
And I want to show the book again for those who are watching on YouTube. The New Paradox, again, it's Robert H. Bork Jr. and Mark W. Davis. So this new book, The New Paradox, addresses conservative socialism. What is conservative socialism?
Conservative socialism is the idea that you can use the tools of government, regulation, antitrust enforcement, industrial policy, not just to protect markets, but to direct them toward preferred social or political outcomes while still calling that pro-market or pro-American. It's a paradox because it comes from the right. Traditionally, conservatives argued for neutral rules, limited government, and letting competition determine outcomes. But what we're seeing now is a shift. Some on the right are becoming comfortable using state power to shape markets, picking winners and losers, punishing disfavored companies, or steering capital in the name of national strength, cultural goals, or fairness. At that point, you're no longer defending capitalism, you're managing it. And the danger, which my father warned about in a different context, is that once you abandon neutral principles, like the consumer welfare standard, in antitrust, you don't get better outcomes. You get more discretion, and more discretion means more politics. So conservative socialism isn't just a label, it's a warning. It's what happens when the right adopts the means of the left, even if it's pursuing different ends.
So, where do you see signs of conservative socialism within the Trump administration?
Well, I think you see elements of what I call conservative socialism and the willingness to use state power to shape market outcomes, often in ways that depart from traditional rules-based conservatism. Take trade policy under Donald Trump. The use of tariffs wasn't just about addressing discrete unfair practices. It became a broader tool to steer industrial outcomes, effectively deciding which sectors should be protected and which should bear the cost. That's a form of government-directed market shaping. You also see it in antitrust rhetoric. There are moments where enforcement, or at least the threat of it, appeared tied to concerns about the speech or political posture of large technology firms. Once antitrust becomes a lever to discipline companies for non-economic reasons, you've moved away from neutral principles toward discretionary power. Another area is industrial policy, efforts to favor domestic production or particular industries, not just for national security, but as a general economic strategy. Again, the question isn't whether any one policy is justified, but whether you're normalizing the idea that government should only should be actively directing private economic outcomes. And that's really the through line. When you move from setting the rules of the game to influencing the results of the game, you're no longer just defending markets, you're managing them. And that's what I mean by conservative socialism.
Mhm. So, what is the job of antitrust regulators?
At its core, the job of antitrust regulators is to protect competition, not competitors, and certainly not political outcomes, but really the competitive process itself. That means preventing conduct that harms consumers, things like price fixing, collusion, exclusionary practices that block rivals unfairly, or mergers that would likely reduce competition and lead to higher prices, lower quality, or less innovation. The key point, and this is where my father was very clear, is that antitrust is supposed to be grounded in objective, economically coherent standards. In the United States, that has traditionally meant the consumer welfare standard. Are consumers better off or worse off as a result of a given practice? Agencies like the Federal Trade Commission and the Antitrust Division are supposed to be referees of fairness in some broad social sense. They're certainly not supposed to be the tools for advancing political agendas. Their role is narrower and also more important: to enforce clear rules that keep markets competitive and predictable. When they do that, you get lower prices, better products, and more innovation. When they move beyond that, as they did during the Biden administration and even in the Trump administration, when they start trying to engineer outcomes, you risk turning antitrust into something arbitrary and political. And once that happens, you don't just lose economic efficiency, you lose the rule of law in this area.
So, what was the Biden administration's approach to antitrust, and is this approach different under President Trump?
The Biden administration took what I would describe as a structural and ideological shift in antitrust. Under leaders like Lena Khan at the Federal Trade Commission and Jonathan Cantor at the Antitrust Division, there was a move away from traditional consumer welfare standard antitrust toward a broader set of goals, concerns about market structure, concentration, labor effects, and even political power. That translated into more aggressive merger challenges, skepticism of large firms as such, and the willingness to bring cases that might not have succeeded under the prior, more economics-driven framework. You also saw a greater openness to using antitrust as part of a larger effort to reshape markets, not just police them. Now, under Donald Trump, at least in his earlier term, you saw something different in tone, but not always in direction. On paper, there was more rhetorical support for traditional antitrust principles, but in practice, there were moments where enforcement risked becoming politicized in a different way. particularly in how large technology firms were discussed. So the contrast isn't as simple as one was aggressive and the other was restrained. The Biden approach was more openly transformative, explicitly rethinking the goals of antitrust. The Trump era approach was less ideologically systematic, but at times showed a willingness to use antitrust or regulatory pressure in a more ad hoc, politically inflected way. And that's really the point I try to make with my partner, Mark Davis, in The New Paradox. Both approaches, in different ways, risk moving away from neutral rules-based enforcement. One does it in the name of restructuring markets. The other can do it in the name of reacting to perceived political or cultural concerns. The common danger is the same: greater discretion, less predictability, and ultimately a more politicized antitrust regime.
Yeah. Now, can you talk about President Trump's antitrust regulators and the plight of CBS News and Skydance Media as chronicled in your book, The New Paradox?
Thank you.
Tell us about that.
Okay. Now, what I argue in The New Paradox is that the Trump era approach to antitrust, while not ideologically coherent in the way the Biden approach is, still revealed something important and concerning about direction of policy. If you look at leadership at the Antitrust Division under Macon Delrahim, that was the Assistant Attorney General for Antitrust in the first Trump term, there was, in many respects, a return to a more traditional economics-based analysis. Delrahim, for example, emphasized vertical merger guidelines and tried to ground enforcement in established doctrine. But at the same time, there was a broader political environment under Donald Trump in which large media and technology companies, particularly those perceived to be hostile, were openly criticized and at times implicitly threatened with regulatory scrutiny. The CBS Skydance situation, as I describe it in the book, becomes illustrative of that tension when transactions involving major media entities like CBS News and Skydance Media are viewed through a political lens, whether fairly or not. You introduce certain uncertainty into what should be a legal and economic analysis. And that's the key point. Antitrust enforcement depends on credibility. It has to be seen as neutral, predictable, and grounded in law and economics. Once market participants begin to believe that the outcomes may turn on political considerations, who you are, what you say, or how you're perceived, you've already weakened the system. So the lesson I draw isn't that Trump regulators abandoned economics across the board. They didn't. It's that even a partially politicized environment can undermine confidence in neutrality of enforcement. And once that confidence erodes, you don't just get different outcomes, you get a different kind of system.
Again, the book is The New Paradox, Robert H. Bork Jr. and Mark W. Davis. I highly recommend this book. It's an eye-opener. Now, Robert, we know that the IRS was weaponized in the past for its treatment of conservative groups, as well as social media censorship. Is censorship a problem from the right side of the aisle also?
I think the honest answer is yes. Censorship, or pressure on speech, is a risk from any direction once you accept the premise that power should be used to shape outcomes rather than protect neutral principles. We've seen well-documented concerns on the left, whether involving government pressure on platforms or the treatment of certain groups by agencies like the IRS. Those episodes raised serious rule of law issues, but the right is not immune from the same temptation. You're now seeing calls from some conservatives to use government power, whether through regulation, antitrust, or platform mandates, to discipline or control the behavior of large technology companies based on their perceived bias or speech policies. At that point, the justification changes, but the mechanism is the same: government pressure influencing private speech. And that's the real line that matters. A free society depends on the idea that government doesn't get to decide which viewpoints are favored or disfavored, directly or indirectly. Once you open that door, it rarely stays confined to one side. So my view is consistent with the broader theme of The New Paradox, that the danger isn't just what one side is doing. It's the erosion of neutral principles that restrain everyone. Because once those restraints weaken, the tools of censorship become available to whoever holds power next.
I always like to ask people this last question who are involved in looking at the either economics or politics. Robert, are you optimistic or pessimistic about America's future?
It's a really good question. I find myself cautiously optimistic, but only if we're honest when we're talking about the risks. The United States has an extraordinary capacity for self-correction. We've gone through periods before where institutions were strained, where legal principles were bent, and we found our way back. That resilience is real. But what gives me pause is that many of the pressures we're seeing now, whether it's the politicization of law, the erosion of neutral principles, or the growing comfort with using government power to shape outcomes, are coming from multiple directions at the same time. That's new, and it makes the course correction harder. So my optimism isn't automatic. It depends on whether we're willing to recommit to first principles, the rule of law, limits on government power, and the idea that the system should be neutral, not outcome driven. If we do that, I think the country's future is very strong. If we don't, then the risk isn't some dramatic collapse. It's a slow drift into a more discretionary, more politicized system. And history suggests that once you drift far enough in that direction, it's almost impossible to turn back.
Yeah. Word of warning. Again, the book is The New Paradox. Robert H. Bork Jr. and Mark W. Davis. I recommend this book. It's a great read and eye-opening. Robert Bork, thank you so much for joining us this week. It's been a real honor to meet you, and I hope I can talk to you again sometime.
Absolutely. It's been fun. These are some of the best questions I've ever gotten, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Flip on the switch, feel the static clear, naming the glow, yeah, the reason we're here. From the edge of the map to your kitchen chair, he's talking wild truth like he owns the air. Out past the highway, out past the mall, where the sand keeps secrets, you can hear that call. It's the Bruce Collins Show. The barrier broadcasting, taking control from the desert wind to your radio. We're the loyal knights of the wobbly table, laughing loud, keeping legends stable. Yeah, the Bruce Collins Show. Funeral rides high over dust and stone, stories like sparks in a cyclone. Strange little kingdom made of coffee and chords, where the late night callers become the lords. Crowns made of stickers, capes made of flannel, we pledge our oaths to the glowing panel. It's the Bruce Collins Show. The barrier broadcasting, still in the glow, from the desert wind to your radio. We're the loyal knights of the wobbly table, raising mugs, making myths and fables. Yeah, the Bruce Collins Show.
That's a wrap, falafelites. This has been a Bad Yodeler production. Good night.